Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Happy Monday. I am Carrie with OESD here for our 14th Perfect Tips and Tricks episode. So happy to have you with us again, as always. Really excited today. We have a very special guest with us. I am going to be introducing you to Tim, who you all know, even if you don't know, you know. So Tim is one of our wonderful artists. He's going to talk to us a bit about how an embroidery collection comes to be. Really quick, I just wanted to touch base with you guys, let you know that tomorrow we're going to start our part 2 of our Embroider Along with our freestanding baskets. So tune in tomorrow at 1 o'clock for that. But for now, I am going to introduce Tim. Let's bring Tim up. Tim, there you are. Welcome. This is Tim. Tim is going to tell us a little bit about himself and then talk about how an embroidery collection is created and the process to get it from our artists' brains and then off to you guys out in the world. So, Tim, take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Tim, one of the artists, the in-house artist at OESD. I've been with the company since January 98. So it's 21, 22 years, something like that.
Who's counting, right, Tim?
Yeah, well, I'm not counting. It's been a long time. But I've seen all the ins and outs of the industry, from the beginning when it was commercial and industrial and definitely, loved every bit of it, how the changes but also I wanted to appreciate everybody from the design team. I can speak for everybody in the design team that we appreciate you guys, appreciate your support, and appreciate just the love that you guys show for our company and for our designs. And hopefully we can give you guys a little bit of happiness in this time, this tough time that everybody's having. It's really important that we want to make sure take care of you guys. Today we're going to talk about a new collection that just came out today. It's called Freshwater Fish. It wasn't designed by me. It was designed by another artist that we have, an extremely talented artist. And I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint so we can look at the images. Hopefully everybody can see this okay.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. We wanted to kind of show the process of how things start. This is just a fun image. This artist was just trying to get all the research in, and it looks a little crazy, but artists can be kind of crazy and abstract sometimes.
To me, this looks like an artist's brain. So, yeah. I know, maybe some of you out there in the world can relate to this, but this is, artists, creatives just trying to get all the information out of our brains and onto a page, right?
Oh, yeah. It looks a little crazy, but that's just the way we work sometimes. One of the main things, too, especially with animals, there's always a copyright relevance that we have to take care of. You can't just use a photograph. We have to make sure everything's original. And so it's a bunch of research for one type of animal to make sure that the colors and the designs and patterns are all correct. And then make sure that, like, the most important thing, that it's just an original design that comes, that you can't find anywhere else. So that's, for us, it's so important. Let's just kind of move through here a little bit. We were challenged to make these detailed fish designs, but we wanted them to be small. Originally, we were talking about even small enough for linens and tea towels and to get all that kind of detail in. So let's just go through and we'll look at the images. Maybe.
There you go.
Here we go. Here you can see we started out with a really detailed design, just an illustration. And we wanted to make sure that the digitizers got everything they need. As the art department, basically what we're creating is a template. A lot of the art that we design never gets seen outside of the company. So we're just basically creating a template for the digitizer. So we want to give them everything that they need. So we started with an illustration, and then she took it into the computer and colorized it. And then you can see the last image there of that, the bass. The amount of detail that the digitizer put in is amazing for that. This design is not very big. It's like the size that you might put on a fishing hat or whatnot. So
is that first drawing, Tim, that one she drew like with pencil on actual paper, right? The first one.
Yeah, and she actually drew, it's in pencil, and it's actually drawn considerably larger than the actual design ends up being, just so we wanted to get as much detail as we could in there. The digitizers are so good that, they know if they need to scale something down, they can leave things out. And all of our digitizers have a art, creative background, and, they're artists within themselves. And so they can, they have the liberty to go in and take stuff out, but we want to give them what they need to produce the best quality design for you guys. We're just going to go through some of the fish images to kind of see the transition from the illustration to the colored version, and then you'll also see that we did some line work designs too that turned out not line work, but more of a monochromatic style that turned out really nice.
I love the color variation on that one. It's so pretty, that subtle changes in the blue.
Yeah, you can see also another important thing to point out is our digitizers, they have the opportunity also to do their own research. And so even though they get a very nice, well-researched illustration to work with, we make sure, if they need to do the research also and make sure the colors are good. And so it's almost like a double emphasis on making sure things are accurate. So they have that opportunity also. Here you'll see this is a different vision of the bass fish, only done as it's a different movement, but it's also digitized in a monochromatic kind of a line work, got some fills in there. We wanted the designs to be very loose density. Things are trending more that way, so we wanted to kind of give it that look. And I believe that is it. We wanted to start producing some designs that were also more, I don't want to use the word masculine, but we're always people are looking for designs to sell for their husbands, and this could be for any fishing enthusiast really, or just fish enthusiast.
Yeah, it's definitely tougher to find images that are unisex, maybe, that are not just flowers, even though so many of us love to embroider flowers on things, or pretty things. There's so many men, and not just men, but the men in our lives sometimes are hard to find things to make for. So we've been really focusing this year on making sure we have a wide variety. Some of you may have seen we had our new release on Scissor Tail Stitches today, which is our sister website, as you guys know, is Hold My Beer. So that is another collection that could certainly go either direction. It's got it's a totally beer themed collection, which is also super fun. Oh, there's Tim.
Here I am.
There you are. So I think that was super interesting. I know that we have a lot more to talk about, in a future episode. We have some new releases coming up in a couple weeks. Tim will be back with us. Another thing that I think is really interesting, and maybe Tim, you can talk about this a little bit. So many of you guys out in the world, and let me know if you do, you love our freestanding structures. And that's something, that Tim really does a really neat job of doing. I don't know, it's sort of off base, but Tim, you want to talk a little bit about how you create those, and the pre-making that you do? I love
Sure.
that.
Sure. There's definitely, it's not necessarily mathematical. There's a trial and error. Everything is built. I start with what Carrie's talking about. I build a paper version or cardstock version out of before anything even goes to the digitizer. You might see one of the structures on my desk in paper. I need to make sure all the different the buttons and tabs and the different mechanisms that we use to put things together, that everything kind of lines up and works the way it's supposed to. There's a little bit of difference, how paper represents in sewing, so I have to mentally take all that into consideration also. We've been doing it for a while, so I kind of have I have an idea of what things are going to do in stitches as opposed to paper. So, but it's very relevant too for the digitizers. That way they have something they can set in front of them and they can kind of get an idea of how everything goes together. And one of the best things that we have is I sit right next to the digitizers. And so these guys, they're a lot more mechanical minded than I am. And so I utilize them throughout the process also, asking them, what do you think about this? Or is this going to work? And a lot of times they help me out and when I get stuck and making sure that everything's going to come out okay. But we just have this great energy in the design department that really makes things like that come together the way they're supposed to. And of course, we're right by the sewing too, so I can see how things are going. I can check out the sew outs and make sure the colors are correct and everything like that. So, but other than that,
that's awesome.
I enjoy it. It's fun for me. It's a challenge. A lot of times I get ideas and I get things assigned to me that I have no idea how I'm going to do. But, we make it work and it's fun for you guys, hopefully, too. We want to give you guys, things that make you happy and make you want to sew and, get involved. And so hopefully we're doing that for you guys also. That's the important thing. That's the most important thing. So
absolutely. I think people are happy. We have a good question.
Sure.
So Tim, where does your background come from? Do you have a formal art background? Or did you just do it as you were growing up? Or where's your skill come from?
Well, the art part, yes, I did. I went to a liberal arts college here in Oklahoma. It's a fine arts college, and where I graduated in '93, and so back then we didn't even have computers in the art department, believe it or not. So it was all forms of fine art. We had everything from pottery on the wheel to screen printing to jewelry. So I had to learn all that stuff, and so I got a bachelor's in fine art from that university, and then I was working for Walmart, of all places. At the time, I was going to school and followed that, like I said, '98, and then got an interview at OASD and got lucky, I guess. So,
and did you always like to create and draw from always, like as when you were younger?
Yes, that was always kind of like, it kind of becomes your identity, I guess.
Sure.
For years and years, I wanted to be a comic strip artist, and that's where one of my dreams was. And I never knew I'd be working in embroidery, but,
I think a lot of us feel that way. I think you find your family and you stick with it.
Sure. And that's a really good use of the word family for Carrie. I would say, at OASD, we are really close. Everybody gets along. There's not a lot of drama. It's just this kind of a awesome creative movement that really works. So
I absolutely agree. I always say, I was very fortunate I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of wonderful people in my life, but the team at OASD is certainly up there on my list of wonderful people. That's for sure. Let's see if we have any other questions. Oh, here's a good one. So maybe this doesn't apply to this question, but when you draw or when the artists draw, is it to scale most of the time? Do you draw to scale or larger and scale it down or vice versa? How does that work?
I personally tend to draw to scale because it helps. It helps me know what is feasible with the stitches. We want to make sure, if you draw something too large, and then whenever it's digitized and shrunk down, a lot of times, if you especially line work, lines tend to blend together, and
sure.
So it helps sometimes. Sometimes it helps not to. Like we were talking about the fish. Trying to get all the detail in there. It just worked out really nice. Those were actually drawn larger, but me personally, I always try to draw to scale so that I know that things are going to work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes if you draw too big, you can put too much detail in, and then when it gets when it goes smaller. Because we try and be very conscious of hoop size. We know that some of you have giant hoops, but not everyone. So we try and make sure to cover, to make sure that we don't exclude people with hoops. I mean, we have to have, we have to keep them sort of larger. It's hard for us to do the tiny, tiny, tiny hoops, but that sort of nice oval size is something we try and be very conscious of.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, I think just making sure there's no more questions.
Okay.
I think we've done it. I think for today we've answered all of the questions. We're definitely going to bring Tim back. So if you guys have more questions, make sure that you ask them in the comments or send us an email. We definitely love to hear from you. And it helps us think of fun things to talk about. And if you have ideas for future episodes, please make sure you leave those in the comments. As always, leave the love for your local shops. We are thinking of them during this interesting time. So many of them are doing such an amazing job of also being online. I know we all have very full schedules of Facebook Lives right now with all the things we want to watch and see and do. So the time is passing quickly, hopefully for all of you. But tune in with tomorrow, 1:00 Central Time, and we are going to be talking about our freestanding basket embroidery along part 2. Looking forward to seeing you all. We'll say goodbye to Tim there in the background. Tim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will see you all tomorrow. Happy stitching.